Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Have you ever wondered what happens when the kindest person you know finally stops trying, not because they stopped caring, but because they were pushed too far? Past silence, past patience, past the version of themselves they believed they had to be. Carl Jung once described this moment as the return of the repressed, when everything you've buried deep inside to survive eventually rises up to protect you. And when an empath reaches that breaking point, they don't yell, argue, or fall apart in front of everyone. They simply disappear. Not out of weakness, but from a strength no one expected them to have. This is the kindness that was never weak. You've probably been told all your life that you're too sensitive. But what if sensitivity was never the problem? What if the real issue is a world that sees emotional depth as weakness, empathy as availability, and emotional intelligence as something to be used? Empaths are often misunderstood, not because they are mysterious, but because their strength is hidden, invisible until the moment it finally breaks free. On the outside, they seem calm, gentle, always there for others. They're the ones people call at 2 a.m. when everything is falling apart. But here's the question, who calls them when they fall apart? Empaths carry burdens that aren't theirs. They hold emotions others avoid. They forgive betrayals that would break most people. They keep giving chances to those who've already shown their true colors. They become a safe space for everyone else's pain, while their own goes unnoticed and unloved. Carl Jung described this imbalance as a split in the psyche, the tension between the face we show the world and the shadow we hide to feel accepted. For empaths, that mask is the helper, the one who is always okay, always kind, always giving, but behind that mask is someone who's exhausted. Someone who feels unseen, someone who has confused being needed with being loved. Think about it. When was the last time someone truly asked how you were doing and waited for the real answer? When was the last time someone held space for your pain? You've been carrying the emotional weight in your relationships for so long, you've forgotten what it feels like to be carried. You've been everyone's safe place, but you've forgotten that you also deserve shelter. You've given from an empty cup for so long, you don't even remember what it feels like when it's full. And eventually, something inside you breaks, not loudly, but silently. Not in weakness, but in transformation. This isn't a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. It's your soul refusing to be split any longer. It's the beginning of awakening to your own worth. Now let me ask you this. Have you ever reached a point where you just couldn't give anymore? Not out of anger, but because you finally realized your own value. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. The collapse you didn't notice. Not every breaking point comes with loud cries or dramatic scenes. Sometimes it starts quietly, like a whisper. It sneaks in slowly, so gently, that even you might not realize it at first. Small changes begin to show. You stop replying to texts right away. Messages that used to make you anxious now stay unread for hours or even days. You stop picking up calls, and this time, the guilt doesn't follow. You no longer rush to keep conversations going or force a smile to make others feel comfortable. You still show up, but something inside you begins to step back. It's as if your soul is gently pulling away from the person you've been pretending to be. Carl Jung called this the tension of opposites. The emotional strain of holding both light and shadow, love and resentment, care and exhaustion, all at once. It's the feeling of your body saying yes while your soul screams no. The moment when smiling feels like a slow kind of grief. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was 32, a social worker by profession and a natural caretaker by habit. She was the one friends called at 3 a.m. during a crisis. The daughter who fixed family problems and took emotional hits just to keep peace. At work, she stayed late to help others, even if her own tasks suffered. She believed deep down that if she just loved people enough, supported them enough, they would change. That staying quiet about her needs was selfless and good. She wore her emotional strength like a badge of honor. But over time, the cost of that silence caught up with her. Her body began to speak a truth her mind didn't want to admit. Headaches that wouldn't go away. Sleepless nights filled with worry that didn't belong to her. A tightness in her chest that felt like drowning. Always giving emotional CPR to others, but never being revived herself. And then one day, on a regular Tuesday afternoon, it happened. Her sister called again, upset about the same toxic relationship they'd talked about 100 times. Same story, same chaos, same emotional dumping. And for the first time in her life, Sarah felt nothing. not anger, not even frustration. Just a deep, still voice inside that said, I'm done. Maybe you felt that too, that moment when caring no longer feels like love but like self-abandonment. When empathy stops being a gift and starts feeling like a trap, that moment isn't the beginning of coldness. It's the beginning of truth. It's the beginning of truth. Jung called it the emergence of the shadow, not the dark or evil side of you, but the part that's been rejected to make others comfortable. The part that says no without guilt. The part that protects instead of sacrifices. The part that refuses to burn out just to light someone else's way. Sarah didn't build her emotional wall overnight. It grew slowly, with every ignored feeling, every time her kindness was taken for granted, every time someone expected her support without ever offering theirs. Her wall doesn't scream, it doesn't seek revenge. It simply stands calm, solid, and clear. A quiet line between who she used to be and who she's finally becoming. And here's the truth. This isn't cruelty. This isn't shutting down. It's not selfish. It's your nervous system finally saying what your voice never could. I've had enough. Jung believed we all long for wholeness, but we can't be whole while hiding our pain, rejecting our needs, and pretending to be okay for the sake of others. Eventually, the soul starts pushing back toward healing, toward the pieces of yourself you buried just to be loved. So ask yourself this. What part of you have you been silencing just to feel accepted? The collapse isn't weakness. It's your strength finally stepping out of the shadows. It's your soul rising up, saying, I won't disappear for anyone anymore. I won't shrink just to be loved. I choose me. This is not the end. This is the beginning of becoming powerful. When the shadow integrates, this is the moment most people mistake for coldness. Friends, family, and partners watch in confusion when you stop doing emotional labor like it's your only purpose in life. They say you're distant, different, or changed. They tell you you're not yourself anymore, which is funny because you're actually becoming more yourself than ever before. They want the old you back, the one who absorbed their chaos and called it care, the one who turned their problems into compassion, the one who made their emotional struggles seem like someone else's responsibility. But in Jungian psychology, this change isn't coldness or cruelty. It's something much deeper and, yes, more dangerous to those who took advantage of your old patterns of self-sacrifice. It's called shadow integration. For most of your life, you've worn a mask, what Jung called the persona, the eternal helper who exists mainly to meet others' emotional needs. This mask was often formed in childhood, when you learned that love depended on making others comfortable, being what they needed instead of who you really are. But every mask has a shadow side. For empaths, that shadow holds all the self-protection, healthy boundaries, and self-care you were taught to see as selfish or wrong. Sarah's journey began when she stopped explaining herself. One day, her sister called, expecting the usual emotional support session, the same pattern of crisis, emotional dumping and relief repeated again and again. But this time, Sarah said something that changed everything. I'm not available for this conversation right now. No excuses, no apologies, just a clear boundary. Her sister was shocked. Then came the familiar reaction, you start being selfish. I need to talk to someone. What's wrong with you? And for the first time, Sarah replied, yes, I accept being selfish, and there's nothing wrong with me. That yes is one of the most powerful words an empath can learn. Once you stop being driven by the fear of losing people, you start living from a place much deeper, the refusal to lose yourself. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who never respected them. You stop proving your worth to those who took it for granted. You stop playing the role of the understanding one who exists to make others feel comfortable with their emotional immaturity. This is what Jung called individuation, becoming whole by embracing all parts of yourself, even the ones you once rejected to be loved. Think about it. How many relationships would survive if you stopped always giving more, caring more, and trying more? Once this integration begins, you become dangerous. Not because you hurt others, but because you can no longer be hurt in the same ways. You're no longer pulled into endless arguments or trapped by false hopes. You're no longer moved by empty apologies without real change. You've walked through your own emotional fire and come out stronger, clearer, and more yourself than you ever imagined. Others notice the change, and their reactions reveal everything about your past relationships. Some panic. They demand more of your time and energy. They guilt trip you, remind you of all the times you were there for them. They can't understand that you now put your well-being first. Others disappear. Without your availability, they reveal they were never truly interested in you, only in what they could take. But a few people, the ones who really love you, celebrate your growth. They've been waiting for you to value yourself as much as they value you. They see the new you, the one who no longer fills uncomfortable silences for the sake of others. The one who lets people hold their own emotions instead of carrying them. The one who chooses peace over temporary comfort for others. To those who used you, this feels like loss. But to you, it feels like coming home after a lifetime away. This is what Jung called the transcendent function, holding the tension between opposites until a new way of being appears. You're still loving and kind, but now those qualities come from fullness, not emptiness. From choice, not fear. From strength, not desperation. You love people, but you no longer love them more than yourself. You care about others, but you no longer care more about their comfort than your own peace. You help when you can, but you won't drown to save someone who refuses to learn how to swim. So, tell me, when did you first realize that being needed isn't the same as being valued, that being useful isn't the same as being loved? This is the birth of the dangerous empath. Dangerous to the systems and relationships that thrived on your self-sacrifice. Dangerous to the idea that kindness means weakness, empathy means availability, and love means endless giving. What the world fears most, people don't fear the empath when they give everything. They fear them the moment they stop giving anything that isn't freely chosen. Because the person who once absorbed anxiety like a sponge now reflects it back like a mirror. The one who translated chaos into compassion now lets that chaos speak for itself. The one who once made excuses for bad behavior now simply observes it without rushing to fix or explain it away. This terrifies those who built their emotional stability on your instability, their comfort on your willingness to be uncomfortable, their peace on your acceptance of chaos. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For the empath, that moment of authentic becoming is quiet but irreversible. It isn't announced with fanfare or lengthy explanations. It simply is. Sarah's family noticed the change at the next holiday gathering. For 20 years, she had been the emotional mediator, smoothing conflicts before they escalated, absorbing the family's dysfunction, and forcing harmony. But this time, when her uncle made his usual passive-aggressive comment about her mother's cooking, and her mother responded with disguised hurt, Sarah did something unprecedented. She kept eating her dinner. She didn't jump in to translate the subtext, soothe her mother, or redirect her uncle's criticism. She didn't perform the emotional triage she'd been assigned at every family event. She let the discomfort sit between them. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken emotion and resentment. Everyone looked at Sarah, waiting for her to wave her magic wand of understanding and fix it all again. But Sarah had retired that wand. She was no longer available to transform other people's emotional immaturity into functional communication. Later, her aunt whispered to her mother, loud enough for Sarah to hear, "She seems different. Cold, distant, not like herself." But Sarah wasn't cold. For the first time, she was truly warm toward herself. This is what makes the integrated empath so threatening to systems built on emotional labor extraction. You protect your peace more fiercely than your image. You no longer translate others' chaos into your own responsibility. You feel their discomfort, but don't make it your emergency to resolve. You choose solitude over performance, authenticity over acceptance, your own approval over their validation. You develop what I call selective empathy. You still feel deeply but aren't compelled to act on every feeling. You can sense someone's pain without assuming it's your job to heal it. You can witness their struggle without drowning alongside them. To outsiders, especially those who benefited from your self-abandonment, this looks like cruelty. But to those who have lived through emotional starvation while feeding everyone else, this is self-respect. This is psychological sovereignty. You no longer wait to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. Let me tell you about Marcus, another example. He was the friend who always picked up the check, offered his couch to those in pain, said yes even when exhausted. His apartment was a revolving door of people needing money, a place to stay, emotional support, or practical help. Marcus measured his worth by usefulness. He equated love with being needed, friendship with availability, goodness with never saying no. But chronic giving from an empty cup broke something inside, not his capacity to love, but his willingness to love others more than they love themselves. The shift came when a friend asked to borrow money for the fifth time in 6 months. Money never repaid, emergencies suspiciously regular. Instead of his usual immediate yes, Marcus said no. Just no. No explanation, no apology, no alternative solution. His friend was stunned. "But I thought you cared about me," they said, weaponizing Marcus's compassion. "I do care about you," Marcus replied. "But I care about me too now." That line changes everything. This kind of emotional maturity threatens a world built on people-pleasing, codependency, and exploiting empathetic hearts. When you stop participating in relationships that require you to shrink for others' comfort, people notice. When you stop engaging with those who see boundaries as betrayal, they escalate demands. When you stop explaining your worth to those who won't see it, they call you arrogant, selfish, or changed. But here's what they don't get. You haven't become cruel, you've become unavailable for cruelty. Both giving and receiving it. You no longer participate in the cultural gaslighting that calls healthy boundaries selfishness or coldness. You reject the narrative that your worth depends on your willingness to suffer for others' comfort. Have you noticed how differently people treat you when you stop fixing their problems? How some relationships simply disappear when you no longer give more, care more, try more. This isn't heartlessness. It's a heart that finally belongs to you first. You still love, but from conscious choice, not compulsion. You care, but without sacrificing your well-being on the altar of someone else's temporary comfort. You've become fluent in discernment. You sense who genuinely values your presence and who just wants your energy, who loves you and who loves what you do for them. And you honor that discernment above all else, even when it means disappointing those used to your self-abandonment. This is what makes you dangerous in the most beautiful way possible. The return to self. They are free. Free from the exhausting performance of being who others needed them to be, instead of who they actually are. Free from the constant anxiety of managing everyone else's emotions while neglecting their own. Free from the crushing weight of believing their worth was measured by their usefulness rather than their inherent value as a human being. Sarah, 3 years into her transformation, lives a life unrecognizable to her former self. She has friends who reciprocate her energy instead of draining it. She has boundaries that are respected rather than constantly tested. She's learned to feel deeply without drowning in others' emotions, to love fully without losing herself in the process. She still works as a social worker, but now approaches clients with professional compassion rather than personal rescue fantasies. She holds space for their pain without absorbing it. She cares about their outcomes without taking responsibility for their choices. Her romantic relationships have transformed completely. She's no longer attracted to those who need fixing or saving. Instead, she's drawn to emotional equals, people who can match her depth without requiring her to be their therapist, mother, or emotional support system. The man she's dating was initially confused by her self-possession. "You're so independent," he said early on, his voice tinged with the unconscious expectation that love meant unlimited access to her emotional labor. "Yes," she replied simply, "I am." He had to choose love or control, partnership or possession. Fortunately, he chose love. This is what Carl Jung called the individuated self, a soul no longer split between pleasing others and honoring oneself. You've turned your pain into discernment, your silence into sanctuary, every wound into a boundary that protects rather than punishes. The dangerous empath isn't dangerous because they become cruel or closed-hearted. They're dangerous because they can no longer be used, manipulated, or exploited. They've reclaimed their softness, paired it with unshakable self-worth, and learned that real love doesn't require being less than you are. Healthy relationships don't drain your life force. Your sensitivity isn't a flaw to manage, but a superpower to honor and protect. You've discovered the difference between being loving and being available, kind and exploitable, empathetic and a dumping ground for others' unprocessed emotions. In a world that mistakes gentleness for weakness and kindness for endless availability, reclaiming your softness with wisdom makes you untouchable, not because you're hard, but because you're whole. You become the light that no longer needs permission to shine. You radiate because it's your nature, not because someone validates you when you're not dimming yourself for others' comfort. The integrated empath loves more purely because love comes from choice, not compulsion. They give meaningfully because they give from overflow, not emptiness. They connect more deeply because they no longer try to disappear into others to avoid discomfort. This is your individuation, your return to self, your dangerous awakening to your own immeasurable worth. You're not the empath who breaks under others' expectations. You're the empath who broke free and found strength. You're not the one who loves until there's nothing left of themselves. You're the one who learned the most loving thing you can do is remain whole while loving others. You're not the one who gives yourself away piece by piece until you disappear. You're the one who learned your presence is the gift, not your absence. What would change in your life if you truly believed, not just intellectually but in your bones, that you are worthy of the same love, care, and consideration you freely give to others? The world desperately needs empaths, but ones who know their worth, who can feel deeply without losing themselves, who can love fully without abandoning their own hearts, who can give generously without giving themselves away. Your journey through shadow, integration, and dangerous awakening isn't just personal healing, it's a radical act of love in a world that's forgotten healthy relationships. You become living proof it's possible to be soft and strong simultaneously, loving and boundaried, generous and self-protective. In becoming dangerous to those who would use you, you become safe for those who truly love you. You become a beacon for empaths, still drowning in compassion, still believing love means self-sacrifice, still confusing worth with willingness to suffer. Your transformation gives them permission to value themselves. Your boundaries show what self-respect looks like. Your refusal to abandon yourself teaches them they don't have to abandon themselves. In a world hungry for authentic connection, mutual respect and love that heals rather than depletes, your brand of dangerous safety is exactly what we need. You stir not too much. You never were. You're not too sensitive, emotional, or caring. You're perfectly calibrated for a world desperate for conscious empathy. Empathy given from choice, not compulsion. The dangerous empath isn't the one who stops feeling. They're the one who feels everything and chooses their response consciously. They love from fullness, not need. They've learned the greatest service is becoming who they truly are. Your journey to wholeness matters, not just for you, but for everyone who benefits from your authentic, boundaried, consciously loving presence in this world.